About a week ago, the Florida Maquis posted a video talking about some very curious anomalies in the seal of the state of Florida. The image that we used was on the left. In the background, it shows what looks like the sun rising over mountains. There are no mountains, of course, in the state of Florida. Some had said that perhaps they were trying to depict sand dunes. The only sand dunes that I know of in North America that would be large enough to even approximate that are on the southeastern coast of Lake Michigan, way, way, way up in the very northwest coast of Indiana, southwestern coast of Michigan. There's a place called Indiana Dunes, and they have some incredibly large sand dunes, but not down here. They don't have sand dunes anywhere near that tall. So I show the image on the right because this is a clearer image of what they were trying to depict. Those are definitely mountains. I have found an old map dating all the way back into the 1700s that may explain what's going on here, and that what we know modern Florida to be might be the top of a mountain. I know that sounds crazy, but stick with me. I'd just like to share this with you. It had to do with an investigation that I was doing into something called Pascua Florida Day. April 2nd, every year, they celebrate the discovery of Florida by Ponce de Leon. Well, there's a lot of discussion around that. It's very hard for me to wrap my mind around the idea of discovering a place that was already inhabited. It would be just like me walking into another neighborhood and saying, I've discovered this neighborhood. People were already here. But there were a lot of Europeans that had been in this region prior to Ponce de Leon. He's largely credited with it. There was Menendez, and there were many, many others. But during this investigation, I came across a very obscure article from the Herald Tribune saying evidence debunks myth that Ponce de Leon discovered Florida. Now, one of the things that they talk about here is this curious stack of conch shells that they had found dating back to the late 1400s that were opened in a very curious way. Christopher Columbus knew how to open conch shells, and Ponce had traveled with Columbus. These were opened by people who were not Spanish, meaning they had found these shells and they had just lately been hacked open instead of being opened properly. But more importantly, the article references this new book about the mapping of the keys of Florida, and the first to do it. 1770, William Gerard de Brom, whose skill as a cartographer earned him the title of Surveyor General of the New World for England. One of his most unusual printed charts, perhaps a precursor to the climate change projections of the 21st century, depicted Florida 10,000 years ago when water levels were lower, in order to demonstrate that the Keys were part of Florida and refute Spain's claim that the Keys were geologically linked to Cuba. Now, let me show you a few maps. This is the primary one I wanted to show you guys. It's what they call the promontory of East Florida. Let me see if I can max this out. This was a map created by this William Gerard de Brom, 1771. And clearly it shows Florida far wider than it is now, and it shows the offshore dunes as actual islands. It shows the water level a lot lower, and the Keys as much more pronounced, and in some cases just large spits of land. Now, if this were the case, and then the water levels rose, what we know to be Florida and what we know to be these islands would have been, of course, the tops of mountains. Here's another map that depicts this even better in more detail. Chart of the south end of East Florida and Martiers, whatever that means, by William Gerard de Brom, His Majesty Surveyor General for the Southern District of North America. All of these things that we know to be islands and keys, with the water level being lower, would have been the tops of mountains. And this was documented back in the 1700s. Now, here's a much older map, that was also referenced. And sometimes it's hard to look at things the way they would have looked at them. Meaning, this is how they would have seen the New World. From the Spanish perspective, from the European perspective. Sailing this direction, they would have encountered just a giant line of island after island after island that would have never stopped. All through here. And the Dominican has mountains. Cuba has mountains. Even Puerto Rico has mountains. But when you look at Florida and you see this large shelf, the waters out here are hundreds of feet deep. This would have definitely made Florida a mountain. And those images that we see could have been handed down through oral tradition. Even Plato had mentioned a warlike race that inhabited a place that he referred to as Atlantis. And he talked about rings of islands and a warlike people. Where Columbus, what was his end was when he was exploring near Fort Myers, and he was attacked by the Calusa Indians, an incredibly warlike race of Indians. Fort Myers is over here on the western coast, I believe. Venice. Where's Naples? Cape Coral, Fort Myers, right here. And this is where the Calusa were. So that's even more evidence that I truly believe what Plato was talking about when he talked about straight out from the Pillars of Hercules, which at the time, if you go back here, is right here, and you follow it straight out, there's no doubt where it leads to. It leads to a concentric ring of islands that looks like there has been a collapse. And when you look at it this way, from this angle, this is pretty clear. It looks like this is the collapse right here. Here's one ring. Here's what looks like could have been another ring out here. And it could have been a combination of not only water levels being lower, but also sinking and rising. And when we look at Florida, this whole area that we live in now as Florida could have been the top plateau of what were mountains. Because even offshore here on this side, you would have been looking over a mountain range. So, anyway, I just wanted to share some of these old maps that predate Ponce de Leon. This is Juan de la Cosa. Once again, this is North America up here on your left, lower left, South America, Cuba, all these islands. This is a 1500 map, which predates Ponce de Leon. This is a Weizsäcker map that also predates. This is the Cantino Planisphere. And if we look up here in the corner, one second, let me get the camera angled over there. Sorry about that. Way up here in the corner, it shows South America, Cuba, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, and what looks like Florida. This is a Cavario map that does the same thing. So I don't think there's any debate that it was the Spanish and the Portuguese that settled the Americas. And the reference to the conch shell, for those of you that are unaware what a conch shell looks like, this is a conch shell. They had learned how to get the small snail animal that lives in here out for the purposes of eating. I wouldn't recommend doing it now because you could go to jail, just like somebody did back in 2018. Let me get this back to where we can see it. There we go. Is that whoever opened that stack of shells, referred to in that article, was not native and was new to the region. meaning that there could have been a great many people here prior to. And what that might mean is some old maps that depict things that people think are other areas might be ancient Florida. So I just wanted to share this. I'll give you links to all of these maps that I've shown in today's video, and also this article. It's a great article. It's a fantastic article. Let me get to the top here. Linda Robertson, the Miami Herald via AP, talks about this South Florida archaeologist that put this together. I mean, really great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. But once again, happy Pascua, Florida Day, or Pascua, Florida Day, celebrating the Feast of Flowers that occurred. And when Ponce did come here eventually, you know, Florida was, of course, nothing but blooming flowers. So, hence the name La Florida. So, anyway, I hope everyone has a great weekend. God bless, like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.